Have you found yourself on a path of healing only to find that the path never seems to end? Many find themselves in what can be called the healing trap, a self-reinforcing loop of healing that doesn't seem to have an exit. Why does this happen? Is there a way out? And are you perhaps being guided not to more healing, but to expansion into your next level of embodiment? In this video, we will explore the concept of a healing trap that many on a path of awakening and expansion find themselves in, the signs that you might be in it yourself, why more intensive healing may no longer be necessary for you, and what your next phase of life is calling for you. So I'll start by giving a little bit of background and explaining what might be going on here in terms of people who are involved in a process of healing. Most anyone who has begun a process of spiritual awakening or intensive personal development has engaged in what could be considered a healing journey. And by that, I don't necessarily mean physical healing, although that can be a byproduct or something that is tangentially perhaps related. But when I refer to a healing journey or healing in general, I'm generally meaning things like emotional healing, mental, energetic, spiritual healing, things related to perhaps internal blocks, traumas that one may have experienced in the past, childhood wounds, things like having or being aware of having shadow parts of self, parts that are disintegrated, or even things at the level of one's soul level work and healing, things like addressing karmic and ancestral patterns, so on and so forth. Many people have been at this type of work very diligently for years, perhaps even decades. And there is a reason behind this. If you have found yourself to be in this situation, you are not wrong. There is an explanation for why this is happening, why this is becoming more ubiquitous for all of us in the collective. We do have a lot to heal in this lifetime, particularly due to what is transpiring in our world at this time. We are moving through a collective shift in consciousness that many refer to as ascension. Generally speaking, we are at the middle point of moving between major cycles. We are at the end of one cycle on the cusp of moving into a new cycle where we are being prepared to move into a higher plane of consciousness to where anything from the previous cycle cannot go forward with us into this new cycle and to this new plane of consciousness. So everything that is out of alignment with that new plane of consciousness must be addressed, healed, and transmuted. So there will be likely more things to address as we continue to go about this shift in consciousness. What is essentially happening is the frequency of our world is very slowly being increased like a dimmer switch, and essentially it could be equated to more light is hitting our world. Light is an increase in consciousness, so as the light shines, it starts to illuminate things, bringing things from the darkness that perhaps we were not aware of. So there's going to continue to be more light shining in our world, and as a byproduct, there will be more things illuminated. But that doesn't necessarily mean it always needs to be heavy or a focused, self-directed healing process where it feels like I'm going back in for this next layer of thing that needs to be healed or solved, or intensive healing work that is generally focused on the past. That type of work can just be a phase of one's life, or perhaps spread apart through multiple phases. We are not meant to be perfect or completely healed before being able to move forward in a meaningful way in our lives. Many of us have in fact reached a point where the healing work could actually be counterproductive. This life doesn't just need to be about healing, but about expanding into and living in a new octave of consciousness. Now, as I mentioned, while none of us are meant to reach a state of perfection, there are in fact seasons of life where it may be worth spending time going inward and turning the light on, seeing perhaps what is calling our attention that we may have been ignoring, repressing, so on and so forth. What are signs that you may actually have more to heal? Signs that it would make sense to actually take some time to address things before moving forward in a meaningful manner beyond what needs addressing. What I am discussing in this video here about this healing trap is not about bypassing. That is never a good idea. There are, in fact, times where it does make sense to perhaps dedicate an outsized amount of energy to inner work and what we might call healing. So what are the signs of possibly being in that state? Things to look out for are potentially things like blocks to manifestation, or just not seeing the results that you are putting a lot of energy towards in your life. Things are not coming to you. Perhaps you've been working at something for long periods of time, months, years, and for whatever reason, you can't seem to manifest that into your lived reality. Perhaps you're also experiencing a lack of forward movement, or generally just feeling stuck. That is a major sign that there is something that is blocking your forward movement, and is very likely as a result of unaddressed patterns in your energy field. There can be also things that are coming to you pretty directly, perhaps receiving frequent or direct messages in your dream space. That is a avenue for things that are subconscious to make themselves known to you and could be directing you. This is likely to be worth your attention, or perhaps even receiving things that could be considered spiritual signs that are directly pointing you to things that need addressing or healing. A very common and major sign, though, is somatic signals from your own body. Your body is a very intelligent vessel and will give you signals as to where things are out of alignment. So this is especially true if you have major chronic pains or major chronic ailments. We don't need to be a perfectly alive and healed physical vessel where there are literally no aches and pains to speak of before we can move forward beyond this phase. But if you have something that is very serious and perhaps has been plaguing you for a very long time, that is a sign that your body is trying to get your attention of something that needs perhaps dedicated healing. If you find yourself having a major lack of clarity, or perhaps not having clarity on your life direction, especially if you are feeling aimless, that is again a major sign that there is a block in your life. If you are not having clarity or your knowing activated when you are in a more healed and whole state, you generally have a knowing of what is meant for you and the directions to be taking in your life. So if you are feeling aimless or genuinely lost, you are probably in the middle of a season that is probably encouraging you to ask deeper questions. Generally, if you are in a state where you are perhaps not knowing what you have to offer, it might be a season where you are being encouraged to learn more about yourself. Essentially, something in your life is very likely calling very loudly to get your attention. Those are the types of signs that you may, in fact, be called into a time of deep inner work. But there may also be signs that you're being enticed or perhaps even seduced into more unnecessary healing. What are some signs that one may be, in fact, caught in this so-called healing trap? Notice how many of the things that I mentioned in the prior segment of the signs that are actually calling you forward for dedicated healing are things from the external or from your own body, somatic sensory experiences, things coming from your own subconscious, perhaps in your dreams. The signs that you're being enticed into more unnecessary healing are typically going to come from your mind. Your mind, and your ego in particular, typically likes to protect itself and remain in its comfort zone. So if you are receiving signs or thoughts that are essentially trying to tell you to keep the momentum going, or perhaps doing something just because it's familiar, that is a tactic of your mind. If you are finding yourself engaging in patterns of comparison, for example, I have not healed as much as this person over here, or I have not reached a certain level of healing or enlightenment as another person, that is coming from your mind and a sign that you're being tricked or enticed into more going back deeper into staying in this same pattern of healing. If you find yourself having patterns of self-doubt or judgment, I'm not good enough because I still have these wounds inside of me, so on and so forth, that is a trick of the mind. Or perhaps you just don't feel ready. Don't feel ready to move beyond this cycle that you are in. Perhaps something beyond is causing you to feel fear. Essentially, what might come next after your healing? And there could be things, fear of the future, perhaps fear of failure. Will I live up to all that I have transmuted? Will I become a success? There might be pressure to make something of yourself as a byproduct of all that you have endured. Or perhaps there could be a fear of success. There could be a fear of having public presence or being seen, and perhaps being encouraged to perhaps share about the things that you've experienced, or perhaps engage in new endeavors that might call you forward into more public presence. the last major item needing of healing may be your own fear of forward movement and being seen and being met by other people. There are some common avenues, perhaps, for being caught in the loop of this healing trap. Certain endeavors that perhaps can be almost trap environments that are possible to potentially entrap some people or be very enticing for encouraging people to stay in this type of healing cycle. For example, it is not uncommon to be drawn to perhaps repeatedly attend certain types of healing or personal development experiences, events, retreats, or perhaps follow the teachings of specific teachers or healers, notable figures in the personal development space. These are absolutely beneficial as potentially triggers for creating transformation in one's life. I myself have attended many of these types of experiences and speak very highly of them, but they can also be very attractive to continue to attend these types of life-changing events because they are so life-changing. It is possible that one can experience so much transformation that they become drawn to that high of an experience. And it is also very common to meet like-minded people, and perhaps in one's own normal waking daily life, they're not being surrounded by such people, so they're in a way being drawn to continue to go back to these types of healing experiences. And it is also possible to get attached to the teacher in a way, or again, as I mentioned, get some type of a high from these types of live events, or perhaps feeling like you haven't mastered everything that this one teacher or group teaches, or maybe this new group or teacher or guide in the personal development space has something new to offer, and you might think to yourself, well, I haven't mastered this new thing yet. I still am in my season of learning and healing. So this also seems to be possible for those working with plant medicines and psychedelics for healing purposes. These tools have a brilliant capacity to illuminate what is hidden in the shadows, oftentimes very rapidly and in very robust fashion. If you have ever participated in utilizing these tools for healing purposes, it becomes very apparent very rapidly that these are very profound tools for massive and rapid transformation. And again, can almost reveal something in such a grand fashion that again can create a seeking type of feeling that there's so much that I've been opened up to, that if you've experienced any of these types of psychedelics or plant medicines, a common experience for some of them is that there's like a time distortion experience, and you are literally in a way exposed to eternity, and oftentimes a very lengthy feeling of healing and learning the types of things that one was unaware of. Oftentimes in one's own, what you could be called shadow experiences that needed to be healed and remembered and devoted attention to. This can create a seductive pattern that there is always something else to be revealed, because generally speaking, anytime you consume one of these sacraments, you're going to get something else from it because it is putting you in an altered state of consciousness. There can be this draw or a pull to do yet one more ceremony, to perhaps try all of these medicines. Well, I haven't tried every single plant medicine, or there is a new one that was just developed, a new synthetic substance for a certain purpose. I haven't yet tried that, or I haven't tried using various combinations of plant medicines and psychedelics. Therefore, I feel like I haven't yet graduated from this era of healing until I've tried all of these sacraments. And as well, similar to the last dynamic, typically these plant medicines and psychedelics are very often utilized in retreats, ceremonies with other people, and creates another opportunity for a lot of deep bonding, which again, on the surface is great, but can pull one in to want to continue to experience that type of deep connection with others. So essentially, there can be a chasing of peak experiences and attachment to the environment that these experiences create, and it may feel scary to move beyond. But perhaps the biggest sign one may be caught in the healing trap is having one's identity attached to their healing endeavors. Perhaps one may be having thoughts that I am the one with lots to heal. It's my responsibility to do all the healing for my family and lineage because they are incapable of doing it themselves. Or I chose to be the one to carry these burdens. therefore I must do it my whole life. Or I am the one who engages in advanced healing practices, esoteric shamanic rituals, and uniquely sacred transformation practices. Perhaps, over time, one may have built their entire life around their trauma, and by extension, their healing endeavors. Perhaps one may be thinking, I've made so many friends and connections. I've built my business and online following through my healing path. Will these people still recognize or follow me if I move beyond that? Will anyone listen to what I have to say if I'm not referencing my traumas and all that I've learned from them? Will I get any attention from others for not having things that I'm actively suffering through? Essentially, who am I without my pain? Am I dishonoring my inner child by letting their pain go? Many people make it their life's mission to talk about some form of trauma they've experienced, dedicating themselves to serving those who experienced something similar. And while on the surface that is very noble, from another perspective, it is simply perpetuating and staying attached to the same trauma, allowing it to remain present in your consciousness and to define your existence. True liberation doesn't come from talking about your pain endlessly. It comes from being truly liberated from it, to where it is essentially an afterthought. That is how you truly break the pattern. Unfortunately, for some people, healing actually isn't a trap. It's a defensive mechanism, a way to perpetuate their own victimhood, or a path towards ego glorification, public admiration, and a sense of personal significance at how much one has suffered. Without it, there is no foundation to have a stable self-concept. They simply don't know who they are without something in need of healing. So, if someone were to find themselves caught in this type of healing trap, how does one get out? Many believe or act as if their pain and traumas are not something they just experienced, but have in fact consumed and overtaken them, like their trauma exists as its own entity that's running their life. They are essentially enmeshed with their trauma and healing work. But many also are unaware that they have total and complete sovereignty over their being and can in fact choose to say, no more, this ends now. This may require a brave yet conscious choice. I'm done with this era. I'm done being defined by my healing and my traumas. Perhaps the most courageous choice you can make is to move beyond your pain and truly let it go. That is genuine liberation and true healing. To know that you may have experienced suffering, hardship, trauma, but it does not have one iota of impact on your energetic state. The teachings and wisdom remain. Your compassion and caring for those who've experienced something similar remain and are allowed to shape you. But your unburdened nature can walk free. A great state to be in would be if someone hears about the hardships you've experienced and they ask you about it and you respond, oh yeah, that was intense. I kind of forgot about that actually. Or something of the sort. That isn't bypass. It's liberation. For some people, it may be necessary to get honest with themselves and ask some tough questions. Am I ready to move on from this? Or am I holding on because I'm getting something out of my pain and endless healing? So now that we have explored the healing trap and perhaps how to get out of it, what comes after that? What's next after a major arc of deep inner work? What lies beyond in the unknown? First, I will show or share some potential signs that you're actually ready to move forward. As I alluded to earlier in the video, that there are signs that it might actually make sense to stay and devote some time to inner transformation. What are the signs that you're clearly ready to move beyond? One very overt sign that you are ready to move beyond is that you have a lot of empty space in your life. You are no longer in states of purging or constantly reflecting on things that you're experiencing. You just have a lot of spaciousness in your life. For example, it might feel like you literally have nothing left to clear or to heal or to purge. Perhaps you might not have a lot of relationships in your life. Perhaps a lot of people may have left your life. They have essentially completed their role in your healing journey. You may even have recently experienced a lot of disposal of physical possessions. You may have moved. You may be in a physical environment where there's just not that much going on. There is a lot of spaciousness. Essentially, everything that's been out of alignment in your life has already left. This can feel a little bit uncomfortable. You might be in a little bit of a void space wondering what's to come, but you may have this feeling of spaciousness, like there's now room for new things to come in. You may in fact be feeling, I'm ready for new relationships. I'm ready for new endeavors. I'm ready to find out what else is out there beyond my healing. I'm kind of done with that, essentially. Next, there could also be a present state of detachment towards moving forward or your future. Maybe in the past, while you're in the thick of a lot of healing and transformation, there could still be worry about what might happen next, what's to come. There could still be a lot of fear in your system. But if you have detachment, this is a sign of having low levels of fear or lower levels of expectations of needing the world to meet you in a certain way. You are simply present with what is. And you may be thinking, it's just time to get moving. I don't care how. It's just time to move forward. You may have been through cycles of ups and downs, had your foundations completely rattled, that you're just now calm and you're ready for whatever comes your way. And this might show up in caring less for how you are perceived by others. Again, you are just ready to move forward, take whatever comes. It's more so about just moving forward. You're ready. And you don't necessarily need to be perfectly and completely in the state all the time, but generally some resemblance of this state could be a healthy sign that it's time to move forward. And hopefully there's some kind of knowing that I've been through the fire. Now let's go do something with it. Generally, you might start orienting towards action, less so about reflection. So this now leads into what is likely your actual next phase beyond your healing arc. What is this next phase? The goal with any kind of transformation, expansion, or healing is embodiment. To embody the learnings into your day-to-day life. If you are still actively processing and navigating the depths of pain, you are not generally in a position to adequately move forward. You are still metabolizing. This new embodiment phase may be emerging for you, and there may still be things to heal or to grow through. As I mentioned, we are still moving through a collective shift in consciousness that is going to take quite a bit of time, and as I mentioned, there's still going to be more light hitting our world. There are things that are still going to be illuminated. But this healing process perhaps may take on a completely different dimension in how it plays out in your life. For example, you may now be able to experience healing through your lived experience, through living, through action. You may experience healing through joy because in the past, you never had the bandwidth to experience joy. So now you may actually experience that joy, and it might be the most healing, cathartic experience that you've had for yourself. You might experience healing through curiosity, trying new things, general expansion into new endeavors, new aspects of self. You may experience healing just through your own embodiment and seeing how deep you can embody this new aspect of self and being present in your life. Perhaps you may experience healing through consciously pushing yourself to your own limits and seeing just how strong and capable you might be in new endeavors. Perhaps you may be experiencing creative challenges that push you to your limits in a way that is nourishing, if still challenging. Again, things like experiencing new ventures or perhaps experiencing cathartic healing of actually being met in contrast to the wounding that you've experienced. Perhaps finally engaging in healthy relationships that create their own form of healing because perhaps you had not experienced that up until this moment. Perhaps the only major things needing addressing are your day-to-day experiences, and you're no longer focusing so much on the past, but you're focused on the present moment. For many of you, the next chapter of your awakening is not more healing, it's embodiment. This is also the phase where you're given the opportunity to refine yourself. It is less about major transformation, blowing through your identities, complete life makeovers. You've likely already done all of that, perhaps for quite a long period of time. But refining, getting your reps in, and examining what's actually working for you might be appropriate in this next phase. Perhaps giving an honest try to putting yourself out on social media. Perhaps you are getting some clarity that might require some public presence, and just seeing how are people responding to who I am and this new version of self. Maybe you're starting to get inklings of a new direction and trying things out, testing things, seeing how others respond to this new level of embodiment. You may be called to refining your practices and your daily routines. You may be asking yourself, which of my wellness or spiritual practices are actually serving me for this next phase? Oftentimes, this is a phase where you will be asked to reduce the amount of things that you've done in the past, to just reducing it down to the essentials. You may find that your twice-a-day meditation practice is a little excessive, or that it's time to create some daily structure for yourself so that you're utilizing your energy most effectively. You may find yourself journaling less about your life and being more present while you actually live it. Things like small tweaks that make yourself more effective in showing up and utilizing all that you've learned from your healing journey. This phase is about dropping the perfectionism that many of us pick up, feeling that we need to do things in a certain way in order to adequately move forward and accomplish the things that we wish to accomplish. It's about asking what is genuinely true for me and genuinely supports my path forward, knowing that it may require more action or more public presence or more directed focus on specific endeavors that perhaps I didn't have the bandwidth to engage in the past. What actually supports me in moving into uncharted territory, so on and so forth. This also might be a time where it is more appropriate to be more externally focused and actually immersed in your daily life experiences. Now, perhaps simultaneously, while you are engaging in more embodiment and refinement practices, refining your past wisdom, this comes with expansion into new territory. And this becomes your new cycle of personal growth. Rather than in the past, historically speaking, the pattern may have been experiencing trauma, major challenge, hardship, suffering, taking a long time to heal from all of that, then you embody it all, have this lived wisdom. The new tone or trajectory of your personal development will be expand, new experience, perhaps a consciously chosen challenge, then embodiment. This will likely lead to expansion in all areas of life, or perhaps you may be invited to expand in all areas of your life. And by expansion, it doesn't necessarily mean by adding more things. It can also mean depth or just increasing awareness to areas of your life that you may have been neglecting, and now you have spaciousness and empty space. The empty space that I mentioned that is likely to be present if you're moving into this next phase is an opening for new experiences. And what new experiences are likely to now come and garner your attention? Things like relationships. Now that you've done a lot of healing, generally you might have space or be in a position where you're not calling in trauma bonds or codependent relationships or experiencing patterns that you've already learned the lessons of. People who can now actually meet you at your level of frequency will now be able to find you, and it will just feel natural. This can perhaps lead to things like healthy unions or romantic partnerships, or beyond that, beyond the romantic realm, even just things like co-creative partners. Now that you are feeling whole and aligned and directed, you are wanting to perhaps start new endeavors, you may start attracting co-creative partners who may help you in your endeavors, or perhaps just deepening the bonds with your current relationships and engaging in deeper presence. And don't be surprised if you find yourself now being called to deepening your bond with all beings beyond just humans, perhaps extending that out into nature, into animals. You might find yourself naturally being called to deepen relationship with all things, essentially increasing your sense of presence in all areas. Another area that is likely to call forward more expansion is in the realm of what you might call your purpose or your mission, if you feel like you have one, perhaps service work or creative endeavors, things that you might call work in the productive output sense. Because again, once you've created empty space, that is going to now likely call in more clarity, new ideas can come in, and perhaps more of these co-creative opportunities can come in. And you now have the spaciousness and the bandwidth that was in the past taken up by all these healing endeavors. You can now direct that energy into your productive outputs. And essentially, this allows for expanding into your expression in your outward pursuits. Your outward pursuits are very often a place to develop a lot of meaning for your life, and now you will have the bandwidth to devote energy to them. And then lastly, what will very likely begin to call you forward once you have this new level of spaciousness and you are being called into expansion is to expand into the spiritual realm or into spiritual connections. Oftentimes, when you have created space in your vessel, you have created space for higher frequency experiences to reach you. For example, experiences in other realms, or expanding into new capacities, things like psychic capacities, or being open and receptive to divine connections. These are all things that are our natural state as humans when we are not in repressed states or having a lot of energy needing to be focused on other things. In closing, I hoped this helped in orienting you on your own healing journey, how to identify if you've found yourself in a loop of healing that it may be time to retire, and how to think about your path forward into your next levels of embodiment and expression. That wraps up this video. If you still find yourself deep in your healing arc, navigating the uncertain territory of how to move forward following these experiences, or simply hoping to achieve your next level of embodiment and expression of your soul's talents, I do offer one-on-one support in these exact areas. I welcome you to check out my website link in the description. I'd be honored to support you in any way that I can. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.